Online news update now, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Reverend Jesse Jackson, the longtime civil rights leader and two-time presidential candidate, has died at his home in Chicago at the age of 84. Jackson was a close associate of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., marching alongside him during the civil rights movement. He was present in Memphis, Tennessee, in 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated.
Reverend Jackson later founded and led the Rainbow Push Coalition in Chicago. In 1990, he became the first African American to greet South African President Nelson Mandela upon his release from prison. In a 2017 appearance on Democracy Now!, shortly after President Trump first took office, Jackson reflected on expanding voting rights in the United States. When we secured the right to vote in 1965, Black Americans were largely disenfranchised. White women couldn't serve on juries in parts of the South. 18-year-olds couldn't vote. Bilingual voting wasn't protected. But we challenged those barriers, fought for proportional representation, and worked to truly democratize democracy. After headlines, we'll hear more from Reverend Jesse Jackson in his own words and speak with those who knew him best. Meanwhile, a second round of indirect talks between the Trump administration and Iranian officials is underway in Geneva, Switzerland. Ahead of the negotiations, Iran's foreign ministry said it is willing to discuss limits on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, but will not agree to zero uranium enrichment. On Monday, Iran's military conducted war games in the Strait of Hormuz as the U.S. Navy deployed a second aircraft carrier strike group to the Arabian Sea. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's largest aircraft carrier, was previously stationed off the coast of Venezuela. U.S. officials say President Trump is weighing possible military action against Iran that could last for weeks. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who has advocated for regime change in Iran, visited Tel Aviv Monday to emphasize unity between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There are two paths right now, diplomacy and the military option. The president is deciding which path best serves our national security. We're talking about weeks, not months, for a decision. In Geneva, Ukrainian and Russian officials are also meeting for U.S.-brokered peace talks, just days before the fourth anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia is demanding that Ukraine relinquish 20% of the Donetsk region, a demand Kyiv has rejected. U.S. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Sheldon Whitehouse recently traveled to Kyiv to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky and pledge support for additional sanctions against Russia. Senator Blumenthal also called for providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles and strong U.S.-backed security guarantees. There must be ironclad security guarantees as the foundation for peace. Ukraine deserves a commitment from the United States that we will stand with them if Russia attacks again. In Gaza, a senior Hamas official involved in ceasefire negotiations told Dropsite News that Hamas will not agree to unilateral disarmament or full demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Reports indicate President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed in December to give Hamas a 2-month deadline to disarm. The Hind Rajab Foundation has filed a criminal complaint in Chile, seeking prosecution of an Israeli Defense Forces sniper accused of involvement in the 2024 siege of Al-Shifa Hospital. The World Health Organization reported at least 21 patients were killed during that assault. The head of the United Nations Development Program, Achim Steiner, is calling for expanded humanitarian access to Gaza. More than 300,000 families are seeking housing. 90% of Gaza's population lacks basic shelter. People are surviving under extremely difficult conditions. President Trump on Monday called Cuba a failed nation and declined to rule out military action to topple its government, citing humanitarian concerns. Cuba's deputy foreign minister responded that U.S. aggression, including the decades-long economic embargo, is responsible for the country's hardships. Spain announced it will send humanitarian aid to Cuba through United Nations channels. Activists in Mexico City rallied in solidarity with Cuba, condemning the U.S. blockade. In Minnesota, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension says the FBI has refused to provide access to evidence in the January 24th shooting death of Alex Prey in Minneapolis. Border Patrol agent Jesus Arocha and Customs and Border Protection Officer Raimundo Gutierrez fired 10 rounds in under 5 seconds. Governor Tim Walz criticized the FBI's decision, writing, "Minnesota needs impartial investigations into shootings on our streets. Trump's left hand cannot investigate his right hand." On Capitol Hill, Attorney General Pam Bondi faces bipartisan criticism after claiming all Jeffrey Epstein-related documents had been released, despite reports that millions of pages remain undisclosed. Republican Representative Thomas Massie, co-author of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, says more files should be released without redactions. On Monday, Thomas Pritzker resigned as executive chair of Hyatt Hotels, citing links to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. In Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass called for Casey Wasserman to step down as chair of the 2028 Olympic Games over similar ties. In France, police searched the Arab World Institute as part of an investigation into alleged connections between its former president and Epstein. Columbia University has cut ties with 2 dental faculty members following revelations of irregular admissions assistants linked to Epstein. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. For more audience-supported journalism, visit democracynow.org to download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, or subscribe to our daily podcast.